to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast, a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
And my name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write about movies, and I am also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Yes, you are.
Indeed.
Yeah, and it's so great to see you in the new year, Dave. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, we hope you had a wonderful holiday season. We hope you had a happy new year. I said all of this on our Patreon, but you might not be a patron. And if you're not, consider joining.
Mm-hmm.
I loved my own segue. No. And for $5 a month, you get access to bonus episodes, weekly bonus episodes. And this week we talked about the 1995 Parker Posey comedy, Party Girl. And yeah, and if you're a patron, go check it out. And thank you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
But yeah, so this is a brand new year. We're excited to talk about movies in this new year. So many more movies on the horizon. But we are revisiting a movie that I talked about on our top 10 episode. We're going to be talking about my number one film of the year. I saw the TV Glow because Dave had not seen it and Dave wanted to talk about it. And I did too, because I realized yes, I said some things, but it was kind of, it was kind of abbreviated. So we're going to expand on that. We're going to have a discussion about it. And we're also going to be talking about the Iranian drama, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, which came out last week in theaters. So those are our two films that we have tonight. It is, or today, or this morning, or whenever you're listening to this. Yeah, it's just the two of us. Evan is off this week.
Mm-hmm.
But we are super pumped when we will chat with him again next week. And yeah, so let's get into this. I saw the TV Glow. It's by writer-director Jane Schoenbrunn, who directed We're All Going to the World's Fair, which Dave, you and I both loved.
Yes.
It's so good. And this premiered at Sundance last year. It's a horror fantasy, and it stars Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne. And let me give you the synopsis. This comes from A24. Teenager Owen is just trying to make it through life in the suburbs when his classmate introduces him to a mysterious late-night TV show, a vision of a supernatural world beneath their own. In the pale glow of the television, Owen's view of reality begins to crack. So I talked about it like I said, when we did the top 10 episode. This is my number one. I absolutely loved this. I loved the vivid visuals. I loved the cinematography. I loved the color palette. I loved the performances by Justice Smith and who had one of my favorite performances of the year, and also Bridget Lundy Payne. I thought they were really great too. I loved the exploration of, nostalgia, especially 90s nostalgia, which also fits in really well with our conversation about Party Girl, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I loved the trans allegory in this, which I just found really haunting and heartbreaking. So I'll talk more about the things that I loved about this film in a bit. But Dave, I want to hear what you have to say. What did you think?
Well, I guess the first thing I'm going to say is I did not dislike this.
Okay.
I don't really know that I liked it. I liked elements of it.
Okay.
I liked the lead performance by Justice Smith.
Yes.
I thought that Owen was the portrayal of Owen was really, really eminently watchable. Mm-hmm. And I like Bridget Lundy Payne generally. I watched all 4 seasons of that Netflix show Atypical, largely because they play the main character's older sister and is very funny and all that sort of stuff. And I think they're really good here. They were also in what's the movie where Nicole Kidman plays Gretchen Carlson, and Charlize Theron is
Bombshell.
Yeah, they're in Bombshell, and but Bridget Lundy Payne's not in this actually all that much. This is mostly Owen's movie, and I like the visuals a lot. But here's the thing: I'm not really sure what I saw. You know,
I don't
mean,
know. What do you mean?
I watched all of these things happen, and
Okay.
and they sort of make sense in and of themselves, but so much of it to me is, opaque's not the right word.
No, but that's perfect because the show within the show is the pink opaque.
Yeah, that's true. The pink opaque. I guess, is Owen an unreliable narrator, even though we're watching it through his lens? Because it seems like even
sort of,
Owen doesn't
but
really know what's going on, and it's like,
yes, that is true.
Is Owen cracking up, or is Owen on his own wavelength? For that matter, is Maddie cracking up? We know, I know for certain that she runs away from home.
Yes.
Maybe she does want to like find out what the TV show is and everything like that. But her stepfather is clearly abusing her in some way.
Yes. Because she makes a very casual comment about how if if he finds out you're here, he'll, hit me again or he'll beat me again. It's so cavalier.
Yeah. But then she disappears and sets the TV on fire in the backyard, and everyone thinks she's dead, but then she comes back. But is she really back?
I think yes.
I think so too, but she's also just kind of gone around the bend, and she's said that she's, buried herself alive and become part of the pink opaque, which is actually a real thing.
Yes.
The show was canceled after 5 seasons, and she's been living in the 6th season, and she needs Owen to bury himself alive, which is how the 5th season ended with the show, and then the show was canceled. Coincidentally, at the same time, Maddie ran away, which also makes me think, well, maybe this really is all in their minds. Oh my God. I don't,
Yeah. Just to flesh it, I realize fleshing it out, the plot a little bit more if you haven't seen this. Yeah. So Maddie is a couple years older than Owen when the movie starts. Well, actually, technically, the movie's all a flashback because Owen is telling this as he's an adult. But yeah, so it's essentially a flashback, and he is in the 7th grade. Maddie's in the 9th grade, and she introduces him to this show, The Pink Opaque, which is super low budge, and it's about 2 girls who have a psychic connection, but they don't meet on screen except in the pilot, and they fight these evil villains, and there's a big bad, Mr. Melancholy, and it's very much it's very Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I also very much got X-Files vibes, especially when there's mention of a mythology episode, because that was such a big conversation piece and chatter around X-Files when that came out. I also kind of weirdly got Xena vibes. So anyway, yeah, it's this big, so they are passionate, obsessive fans of this show. And then Maddie wants to run away, and Owen is terrified and doesn't run away with her. And then, yes, she disappears, and then she reappears 8 years later after his mother's died, and he's living with his father in his childhood home, and Maddie just appears. And then she says all this, which Dave, you just said all this stuff about how she's like, it's actually real. It's not a show. She's like, how do you remember the show? And he's like, yeah, it's a show. We loved it. And she's like, no, it's actually real. Do you ever feel like time is moving too fast? Do you ever lose time? Do you ever, get things confused? And so basically, yeah, she is claiming that Mr. Melancholy has poisoned Owen as the character in the show, and has trapped him in the Midnight Realm, which is the quote real world. Yeah. So, and then and then she disappears again. So
right, and we don't know. There's that really long shot. It's from really far out, where it seems like she's getting ready to bury herself again or whatever, and Owen grabs her and lays her down on the ground. Am I making that up? On the football field?
I think he pushes her. He pushes her away.
Oh,
that's what I thought. That's what I saw the first time, and watching it second time, that was the vibe I got, was that he pushed her because he's running away from her.
Got it.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to bury himself, because he can't face the quote reality, which is her reality.
Right. So
And
then
I think his reality too, which is, yeah, I think everything she's saying is true.
okay.
I think there are clues.
Well, I would love to know what they are, but I mean, the part where he's trying to jump into the TV and his dad, played by Fred Durst,
Yes,
pulls
who's
him
great.
out of the TV.
Mm-hmm.
And also, interestingly, I can't remember. I think it's Tara is played by her name's Lindsay Jordan, and she's called Snail Mail. She's a musician, and she's got a
Mm-hmm.
couple albums that I have that are very good. I didn't know that she did any acting, and maybe she doesn't. I have no idea. But I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Snail Mail. They're
It
playing
is, yeah.
Tara.
Yeah, Phoebe Bridgers is also in this too, and yeah,
Yep.
there's a lot of artists in this and on the soundtrack.
Yeah. And so I just guess I don't usually have a problem with movies that don't explain exactly what's going on. And in fact, as you know, in horror movies, I prefer that. I like my horror to just kind of happen.
Yeah.
So, but here I'm kind of like, I'm not really sure what's happening. And then at the end, when Owen is older and probably in his, I guess, 40s and working at that sort of Chuck E. Cheese-esque, although it's not Chuck E. Cheese. There's like no animatronic anything, but it's
Right.
like a birthday kind of
Yeah.
video game place.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of, everything stops, like time stops, and
Yes.
he's losing his mind in that room, and he's screaming for his mother. And then he's in the bathroom and he cuts his chest open and he sees the TV glow through his chest, but then he goes back out and he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry that all happened." I'm like, what's going on? You explain it to me, Megan.
Well, Owen is a trans girl.
Well, okay.
So that's what's going on.
Yes, I got that, but at the same time, it's just like everything is so squishy around the edges. I mean, I don't really even know what I'm trying to say. It just, I guess maybe the allegory just didn't really. It was a little too soft is not the right word either. But it's like it's not in focus. You know what I mean?
Too ephemeral, too fuzzy.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't need it to, Owen to have a big epiphany moment, be like, "I'm a trans girl," but
But see, to me, those moments are really obvious. Like, especially watching it a second time. I mean, I got this in the first time, but like when one of the opening shots is Owen in that, like kind of that, like when you're a kid, and I don't know if they still do this now, but like when you balloon up like a big flag or a balloon and you're underneath it, and it's the colors of the trans flag.
Exactly.
And so there's that. And then when
he goes back to that memory later.
Yes, exactly. And then when Maddie's telling Owen everything about, quote, reality about the TV show. And then Owen sees himself in the dress that the character of the show is wearing. And something he says really, and I feel weird even saying he, because I'm saying he's a trans girl. So that's why I feel weird saying those pronouns, because those feel wrong. Yet Owen never declares his gender. But something Owen says very early on to Maddie is when Maddie is asking. So Maddie is into girls, and she's saying that because Owen wants to go over her house and watch the Pink Opaque. And she's like, I'm into girls, right? And Owen's like, oh, yeah, of course. That's cool. And she's like, okay, I just want to make sure you know. And then she asks him, she's like, are you into girls? And Owen doesn't answer. And then, are you into boys? Owen doesn't answer. And Owen says, I like TV shows, which just kind of breaks my heart. It's so kind of lovely and sweet and also kind of sad. But there's like this really bittersweet tone to it. But then Owen says something about cutting himself open and he'd be scared at what he would find. And then he literally cuts himself open and finds the TV, which to me means that the TV show is the reality, but he's too scared to embrace that reality and go live that truth, which is the fact that Owen is a trans girl.
Okay. got all that when I was watching it, but I still.
That's what I mean.
It just didn't work for me then. I guess
Maybe
maybe
it
that's what it
didn't.
is.
But the thing of it is that I think you're supposed to have all these conflicted feelings about
maybe.
it. I think that's the whole point, is that because the things I have read after watching the movie the first time, the things I read from various trans critics, and Jane Schoenbrunn themselves, is that that's what body dysphoria and gender dysphoria feels like. It isn't all neat and like clean lines. Like, it is kind of squishy and fuzzy, as like you said. So, and I think there's a lot of existential dread and discomfort and unease in this film, and I think a lot of that has to do with that's how trans people feel with, kind of cis-normative societal constraints, and when they haven't come out yet or haven't transitioned. So I think those feelings are intentional. And if it didn't work for you, totally fair. But I would argue those feelings are intentional. Like, you're supposed to kind of feel unsettled. You're not supposed to feel like you got everything, or that everything makes clear sense, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say you're supposed to feel unsettled, because I don't feel I never felt unsettled. Like, I've heard a lot of people describe this as like a horror movie, horror adjacent, I guess is what I'd call it. It's like, I think
this is a straight up horror movie.
You do?
Absolutely.
Well, I can see that the lead character's horrified. There is that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it felt more like, and this kind of, I think, maybe fits into what you're saying about, what trans critics have said and things like that, is it feels like an hour and 35 minutes of existential dread.
Yeah, so. That's what I'm saying. Yes, there's existential dread in this. That's literally what I just said.
Yeah. No, and you're right. I'm agreeing with you. It's like, but that's,
I love it.
But I didn't feel the horror
you didn't
of it.
Feel the horror of that. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think also going into it, I had been told that this is it's weird, and it's a horror movie, but it's not really a horror movie. Is this that? So I was just I wasn't really sure what I was going to get, and then when I wasn't like terrified, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you could call it a horror movie. It's definitely different from most horror movies.
It is. It is weird. Absolutely. Yeah.
The thing is, I don't actually think it's all that weird. It's just
I do.
Well, it's the same thing. We're all going to the World's Fair.
Yeah, that's weird too.
That's weird. That movie's weird, I think. I think partly because it's so focused on that one character, because it's so low budget. I think just by the nature of the way it was made, it is kind of just a little bit weird because of how it's made.
Fair. Yeah.
But I think the vibe of that worked better for me. Although I will say the vibe in this movie is consistent. I mean, it has a tone.
Mm-hmm.
It's very clear that that Jane Schoenbrunn, how do you pronounce the last name?
I am unsure, but I think it's Schoenbrunn.
Schoenbrunn.
But do not take my word for it.
Okay. Had a vision, executed that vision, in a very clear to them manner.
Yeah. No, they very much know the films they want to make, and I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. But I don't know. Just a lot of different kind of conflicting sort of thoughts. It's just, I also think this is maybe not just a one view and talk about it kind of thing, because there are lots of different, clues and cues and visuals and things like that. I mean, even the downed power line thing, I'm like, is it really about a downed power line? I don't think so. So, because you can see the downed power line at the corner of the frame, but it looks like it's stop motion in a weird way. It's like down power line, but what does it actually represent?
Right. Exactly. So,
yeah. So that's I think I don't mean to be unclear, but I think
I don't think you are.
Yeah. It's
No, I think this is a film that's hard in certain ways to maybe talk about or categorize because there's a lot of nebulous elements to it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, I think that's intentional, and to me that adds to the beauty of it and what I love so much about this. This is a movie that absolutely haunted me. Could not stop thinking about. It would bring me to tears a lot of times just thinking about it, and it made me cry again watching it a second time. Yeah, so I think this is an absolute beautiful piece of cinema. I cannot say enough good things about it. I had such a visceral reaction to it, but yeah, I can understand if you're kind of like, wait, did I miss something? Am I not? And it doesn't sound like you did because you were cued into everything.
Yeah,
But
I don't know. One thing I did want to talk about.
Oh, yeah,
I don't think it gets glossed over in the movie, but it's one part of so many different things. Is when Owen goes back to watch the show again as an adult and finds it in the streaming service and finds it's completely different from what he remembers.
Yes.
That it's really juvenile and even kind of silly. Is that Owen miss watching it?
I debated this
so?
too. No, I think he's miss watching it. Yes, I think it's to throw him off. Throw him off the scent of his true destiny, quote unquote, as they say in the show, in the movie. But it very much could be, or you can read it both ways, but it also could be just like, oh no, it's not as serious or as intense. Because that's one of the first conversations, or actually that is the first conversation Owen and Maddie have, is that Owen says something about the Pink Opaque, and he's like, oh, isn't that a kid's show? And she's like, no way. And she's like, yeah, it's on the YA network, but no way. It's so scary, and the mythology is so complex and it's so intense that it's not a show for kids. And so it could be looking at it with adult eyes.
You know what? I also just thought of when Owen is in the car with his dad and his mom, and he says blah blah blah, something about the Pink Opaque, and his dad says, "Isn't that a girl's show?"
That's right.
I do remember being my ire going right up to the top of my head when Fred Durst says that. I can't take Fred Durst seriously about anything. I'm sorry, the fucking guy from Limp Bizkit. I know he's directed a bunch of movies, but Jesus Christ.
Well, he's still good in this. There's also that scene, speaking of infuriating scenes and really disturbing ones, when, first, when Owen is watching the show and he hears his father come home, he immediately shuts off the TV and takes out the VHS tape. But then when there's another point, or that point when his father like pulls him from the TV and he's shoved him in the shower, and there's something so brutal and like borderline abusive. Like there's just, it's so off-putting, that scene to me. It's just horrifying. Like as if, even though he hasn't said the words, it's like, it's almost like man up, like try to, like that's the kind of vibe I was getting.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. Fred Durst. So,
but anyway, yeah, I mean, like I said, I could gush about this all day. I did gush about this earlier. But yeah, I found this an incredibly beautiful, aching, poignant film. So, but I'm glad you finally watched it.
Me too. I mean, it sounds like maybe I'm just like, ugh, but I'm glad I watched it too.
Yeah. I also have to say, I think this film really nails 90s nostalgia as well as the feelings of connection over a show that you feel such passion about, and like passionate fandom.
Yeah.
And kind of reading everything obsessively that you can get your hands on about a show that you love. So yeah. So anyway, lot to unpack with that. Lots to dig into.
Yeah.
But let's talk about our next movie, which is the Iranian drama, The Seed of the Sacred Fig. This premiered at Cannes. This is written and directed by Mohammad Rasulov. This is also the German entry for the Oscars. even though it's an Iranian film. And I was going to say, I'm going to give the synopsis in a minute, but I have to give the backstory of this film because it is so fascinating and inspiring and heartbreaking all at once. So Mohammad Rasulov is he is a refugee. So he's not allowed to make films in Iran, but he makes them anyway. And when it was announced that this was going to premiere at Cannes, there was a prison sentence that was put out for him for 8 years. He had a fine. He was going to be whipped, and he fled to Germany, which is where he's living now. Some of the cast and crew also escaped Iran, except for the 2 lead actors who are in this, who are still in Iran and are trapped there and cannot leave, which is just wild to me and horrifying. But so this film was filmed in secret. And so because of its criticism of the Iranian government. So let me give you the synopsis. This comes from Neon's website. The Seed of the Sacred Fig centers on a family thrust into the public eye when Iman is appointed as an investigating judge in Tehran. As political unrest erupts in the streets, Iman realizes that his job is even more dangerous than expected, making him increasingly paranoid and distrustful even of his own wife, Najma, and daughters, Sana and Rezvan. So this movie is 2 hours and 47 minutes. It is a long movie. And it starts off with Iman having to sign, this is a new job for him, and he has to sign an order that was mandated to him where he has to sign someone's death warrant. And he's not even allowed to read the case. He hasn't read the case. He has no idea if the person should be put to death or not. He has no idea if they're guilty, no idea what the parameters of this case even are. And he's basically told by a coworker, they're having this conversation, and the guy's like, yeah, you have to do it. And then he writes down wiretapped. So Iman is already struggling right from the start, like, I don't want to do this. But he does it because that's what's expected of him. And that's, he's not going to start questioning things, I guess. So it's too dangerous. And when he announces this job, his wife tells their daughters, and she's like, you two are going to have to comport yourselves differently. You're going to have to, you're not going to be able to be on social media. You have to make sure you wear hijab. You have to be careful who you're talking to, because all of that reflects on us and your father, and he could lose his job. So there's that. But then protests are happening. And so this is set around 2022 when massive protests were happening. And one of Rezvan's friends starts protesting, but then she's not actually protesting at this point. They're just leaving school or walking by school because her friend is away at college, and she gets shot in the face with a buckshot. And so Rezvan brings her back to the house, and like the two daughters are like terrified because she's like got the swollen eye and she's bleeding, and they're like, we got to take her to a hospital. But then if they take her to a hospital, she'll be arrested and kicked out of school, and it's a whole thing. And the mom is like, I can't believe this is happening, and mom's scared. And so they get the girl out, and then she disappears, and then they're trying to find out what happened to her. And so then, meanwhile, Iman has brought a gun home because he was given a gun for his job, and it's in the nightstand drawer. Why it's not locked up, I'll never know, but that's a whole other thing. So then the gun goes missing, and this causes a huge problem because Iman could be not only just fired, but he could be imprisoned for losing the gun. And so he starts asking, he asks the girls, and they're like, what gun? We don't know what you're talking about. And the wife is like, I don't know where this gun is. I have no idea. And so everything starts to escalate. And then he takes them to be interrogated by one of his coworkers and friends who's like a master interrogator. And the girls don't want to do this, but they do it. And then the wife doesn't know, she doesn't realize that she's also part of the interrogation, and it's filmed, and one of the daughters is blindfolded. Like it's terrifying. And this just keeps ramping up and ramping up and ramping up until Iman like then hit their address and phone number are like posted on social media. And Iman takes them to his childhood home, like out away from everyone in the countryside. And until he then is incensed and locks up one of the daughters, Rezvan, and his wife, and then Sanaa gets away, and there's like this whole chase. So it's a lot. It's a lot happening over the course of almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
So we'll dig into more of the details as we talk about this. But Dave, what did you think of this?
I thought it was a little long in the tooth, but by and large, this was compelling as shit.
Yeah.
So you did leave out one piece of information, though.
I left out a lot, but
Well,
yes,
yeah.
but please.
Well, the key
please,
piece
by
of
all
information,
means.
Sanaa is the
that
one who
Sanaa
took
stole
the gun.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which there's no reason that anybody watching this should know that instantly. But the moment the gun went missing, I was like, well, it's the younger one, obviously.
Well, and because it's such a red herring, because arguably you think it's going to be the older daughter, because
Right.
she's the one who's going like head to head with her father. She's the one challenging her mother. She's the one who's like, arguing with her father about like, how do you know you're right? And how do you know the protesters aren't? And so, yeah, so it's like, of course it's going to be her. Although I
Right.
thought it was going to be, actually, I thought it was going to be the wife, honestly. So,
Oh,
yeah,
there
I
you go.
did.
No,
Yeah.
I figured it was going to be Sanaa because she was sort of like quietly very supportive of everything
That's true.
Rezvan
That's a
does.
good point, yeah.
And is very, I guess I'd call her soft spoken almost. Like she's, kind of a vibrant, curious teenager, but she's but she's also like very observant. And it seems like, where her sister is kind of everything's like right at the top, passionate, smart, passionate, believes in what she believes. But Sanaa has more of a, I'm going to watch this and see how it unfolds kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she also plays the parent game better than her sister does too, because she has the whole cooking thing with her mom,
yes.
which she's clearly doing just to kind of like keep things,
Mm-hmm.
to keep looking respectful.
Right. And she placates mom too when Rezvan is so incensed that she's being accused of stealing this gun, and she's like, and she's talking back and everything, and then she's like, well, how do we know you didn't take it? As she's saying this to Najma, her mom, and
Right.
Najma like hits her, and then Sanaa like immediately stands up and like almost like pushes mom to like whisk her away to like soothe
Right.
her. So you're right, you're very, very spot on that.
Yeah. A combination of, I think, her guilt, but also just like
yes.
Playing the part that she's chosen to play. So,
yeah. Well, then in that third act, we see how shrewd she is, because she like there's like another building or house, and there's like speakers, and she sets up speakers, and she's playing like family videos to lure her father out so that she can free her mother and sister. So like she's also watching gun tutorials on like YouTube,
how to load and unload the gun. Yeah.
Yeah, which is very, very smart. So
Yeah.
So she's got a plan, and she's very, very shrewd with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Shrewd. Good word to describe her. And of course it all ends with her accidentally.
Oh, man.
I think what happens is she shoots the ground, and the ground is so unsteady, it gives way, and her father, kind of falls into this. It's not a cave, but it's, there's these series of I don't even know how you describe, like you've seen them in all kinds of movies that take place in this part of the world, like tunnels built into the sides of hills and homes built into the sides of hills and things like that. And they're just, they've fallen into disrepair or, they're just not functioning anymore. And so the ground is already shaky beneath them. Another metaphor, you might say. And then, Sanaa is, worried that basically her dad's going to like throw her off the side of this, cliff. And
I think that's a fair worry or assumption.
I absolutely do too.
Since he's gone completely unhinged.
He has gone completely he's gone around the bend. And she shoots the ground at his feet. It's clearly like a warning shot. And
yes.
None of them expects what is going to happen. And they're all, the three of them who are still alive, horrified. And like the last shot of the movie is Iman's hand, like just kind of outstretched, buried, the rest of him buried under this earth, and the other gun that he has borrowed from his coworker next to him. And it's just like, jeez. Talk about a movie that'll get you kicked out of Iran. So yeah, I mean, the thing is it's like, it's actually a pretty straightforward narrative, very straightforward indictment of the Iranian theocratic regime.
Yes.
But filmed in such a way that it feels like a thriller. And the tension just, that slow, making everything more taut over 2 hours and 47 minutes it's really masterfully done.
Absolutely.
And that scene after they're on their way to the countryside, and Iman realizes that somebody has been tailing them and
filming
them, and then Iman starts running him off the road, and I mean, it's just crazy. We don't actually know. I don't think we know what they do with them. They find them.
Yeah, and then he says, tie them up.
And he says, tie them up. And then the scene ends.
Yeah, and we never see them again.
Yeah, and it's like, tie them up. Well, what happened? And did you put them back in their car? Did you shoot them? You didn't shoot him in the back of the head, but like, yikes. Yoicks, I say.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is interesting that you say that it's this straightforward narrative, but yet it doesn't feel so straightforward in the sense that it is such a thriller. But also what's interspersed is actual footage of protesters throughout the film. The girls are both they're watching protests, and Rezvan is seeing students her age, like college students her age, protesting, and women ripping off the hijab. And they talk about the death of Mahsa Amini, who was a real person and was murdered while incarcerated, and her death was blamed on a stroke, which Najma says, and the mom says in the movie, she's like, well, no, she died of a stroke, and people die of strokes every day. And Rezvan's like, what? Which then later comes back around when Najma's like, you're going to stressing your father out, you're going to give him a stroke. And Rezvan's like, well, people die of strokes every day. So
yeah, it's like, when she said that, I was just like, geez, fucking pushing the line there, kid.
Right,
wow.
Right. But it's funny. You saying that just made me think of something I thought of while watching this. It's really fascinating because, and this is obviously why it's so important for people of a community or of a place to tell their own stories. But so often when you see, or there's discussion of a movie about Iran or Persian people, it's this kind of like very rigid notions of being like men being abusive and very strict, and not saying that doesn't happen, but here Iman is a very loving father. Like, he's very gentle. He wants to be close with his daughters. Najma talks about how, she talks to him and she's like, you got to spend more time at home. You have to have dinners with the daughters. They miss you. They need your guidance. And it's very, very sweet. And so I think I love that this movie is as long as it is, because when you get that turn that Iman takes, not only does it feel well earned, but it also feels jarring, even though it's happening over the course of this film slowly, but it feels jarring because he started off so loving, and now he's like straight up locking his wife and his daughter in prison cells and bringing them food as if they're inmates. Like,
yeah,
it's bonkers. And like, he's interrogating them like they're criminals. And he's like, first Najma admits to taking the gun, even though she didn't. And she's like, I took the gun. Just so, I'll give it to you and we can leave. And I'll give it back to you when we get home. Just let us leave. And then Razvan says she took it. And she's like, I'll show you where it is. Cause she knows at this point that Sanaa had the gun but it was in the car. And so she takes him to there and she's like, oh my God, it's not here. It's supposed to be here. And he's like, you're all liars. And like, he's like vicious in it. Like, he's just lost it. It's just,
yeah.
He is just.
Maybe that's what the theocratic regime does to you. Who knows?
Well, that's why this is called the seed of the sacred fig, because of the whole thing about figs, and they have aerial roots that like wrap around other trees and essentially strangle them to death in order to live. And yes, so accordingly, that's the metaphor here, is that the theocratic regime is strangling the people of Iran. So,
yeah. I mean, not very subtle, but at the same time.
No, it's not. It's not subtle, but
it's funny when that description comes up at the beginning, and it's like, and the fig does this, and I just remember thinking, or as I like to call it, Chekhov's sacred fig. Like, when is this metaphor going to play out? Over the entire runtime.
The entire movie, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think, and that's the thing too, is I knew that this was a thriller. And that was part of why I wanted to see this, a small part, because I'm also fascinated by Iran and Iranian filmmakers. But I was expecting the threat to come from the government, like to be like, oh, the government is, now they're tapping their phones. Oh, now the government is shutting off their power.
It's much more insidious than that, isn't it?
It is. It makes it so much worse that it's coming from him.
It's coming from inside the house.
Inside the house. The calls are coming from inside.
That's right.
Thank you, Black Christmas.
Well, I didn't know that this whole movie was going to hinge on it doesn't just hinge on the gun, although that's the catalyst. But
that's a huge part, though.
I know, but I mean, when I can't remember the wife's name. Najma. Thank you. When she finds the gun, the first night, or I guess it's the second night that Iman brings the gun home, and he's had to sign that death warrant against his will. And he just goes right into the shower. He doesn't even speak to her. He just hands her his coat, and he goes into the bathroom and he takes a shower, and he leaves the gun on the top of the toilet, and she finds it later. And I was just like, I feel a harbinger of things to come here.
Right. Well, and that's the whole thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this movie doesn't really go anywhere you don't expect it to go, but at the same time, it's still really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, you had talked earlier about the tension, and another scene or another sequence that I thought was so incredibly tense is after Sanaa tells Najma that their address has been put up online, and then you see Iman and he's leaving work, and he's got a mask on, and he's in the car, and he's like looking around everybody, and there's no score, there's no quick cuts. It's just long takes, and it's just him looking around. But like, I felt like I wanted to crawl out of my skin from tension.
Absolutely.
Because you're like, oh my God, is someone going to kill him? Is someone going to shoot him? Is someone going to arrest him? Is someone going to hurt? Like, it's all of the possibilities that could have been happening, and like your mind going to all these terrible places.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, he's the terrible place.
Yeah. Again, I say the call is coming from inside the house.
It really is. It really is. Which is funny because I'm realizing this now too. That's what the interrogator says to Najma when she's like, I don't have the gun. Like, why would you think it's me? And like, why are you interrogating me? And he's like, well, oftentimes it's somebody that somebody knows. And so it's, the culprit is clearly someone they knew.
Yep.
Oh, God. Yeah. So I also thought this was masterfully done. I thought it's incredibly well shot, especially, again, in secret. Like, it kind of just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
But I think this is incredibly well shot, incredibly well acted. I think the whole cast is just excellent.
So good. I mean, they're good. They're all good. I think Iman's performance is masterful. And I think Najma's performance is masterful. And I think the daughters are great too. I mean,
daughters are so good. Yeah.
Good. But I mean, the other thing is, I also thought this was going to be Iman's movie, which it is not. It's Najma's movie.
No, it is. Exactly.
So that was kind of a surprise. Not good or bad. I was just like, oh, this is actually more about the toll it's taking on the family.
Right. Exactly. And how much she has to acquiesce to him or just does, because that's what she thinks she should be doing. How much she has to sacrifice, how much the girls have to sacrifice. Like, it is really, really compelling and really fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I was riveted. I thought this was
absolutely
an excellent film.
Absolutely.
I can see why so many people have praised this.
Yeah. Well, we were going to do this a couple weeks ago, and then for some reason we didn't. I don't remember why, but maybe because it came out later than we thought it did. I don't remember. But
I don't remember.
Yeah. We had talked about it, and then we're like, we won't. And then we get to do it this week. So great.
Exactly. I know. And I'm so glad. Because I think there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about here. I mean, and there's so many other things that that we're not even getting into, like so much about, like censorship and, gender restrictions about, clothing and, kind of basic things, like the government forces women to wear hijab, and of course it should be a choice, and just kind of just ludicrous things. Like Sanaa wants to dye her hair blue and paint her nails, and that's that becomes a huge point of contention because she wants to do these things, and it's just
well, there's also it's also just funny how the women, not funny, haha, but when they go to buy the dress for at the beginning, I think it's for Rezvan, right? Or is it for Sanaa? I don't remember. Or is it for the friend?
I think it's for Sanaa for school.
Right. And then they're talking to the
because she's saying she doesn't like tight clothes.
Right. And
she doesn't like baggy clothes. Sorry.
Right. They're talking to the tailor, and the tailor's this older woman, older than their mother probably. Mm-hmm. And you think that she's going to be kind of uptight and whatever. And they're talking about how they don't like, baggy clothes. And she's just like, well, who does like baggy clothes? I mean, come on. And she's like, well, I don't like the way this fits on my body. She's like, well, you don't like the way it fits on your breasts, on your shoulders. It's just fine. It's like, and this woman is just completely, open about everything. And you see, oh, this is not that we don't know this, but to just see it, portray it as, well, we're speaking very openly together because we're all just women here talking about what it's like to wear a dress as a woman, and not have to fucking worry about the theocracy eavesdropping on us.
Right. Exactly. Well, it's also there's little parts speaking to that when all four of them go out to a restaurant early on and they're sitting in kind of those kind of outdoor compartments that popped up everywhere once COVID hit. And when the male waiter comes in and all the women adjust their hijabs to make sure their hair is covered, and when they don't have to worry about that, when they're with women. So.
Right.
But it's all those little things that are not so little, but little moments,
right,
that we see.
Exactly. Well, this was great. Everyone should see it.
Agreed. This is an excellent film. And a really important film too.
Yeah. And I would even argue that even though I don't speak Farsi even remotely, you could probably watch this without subtitles. I mean, it's pretty.
Ooh.
The visuals being what they are, and there's long stretches where there's no dialogue at all, Iman driving back, and I think that you could probably get away without watching or without reading the subtitles if you wanted to. If you didn't, then
I'm sure it would help. But
yeah. I mean, of course, you'd miss like the nuances with the gun and the interrogation, but other than that, I think you're right. I think you could get the broad strokes, which I always think of. I always think of George Miller when, as far as like how he storyboards everything, and he wanted like Fury Road to be a movie where if you turned the sound off, you would still know exactly what's happening. And which I think as a movie that's where the sound is so, bombarding, it's kind of funny to think of that. But I love that ethos of filmmaking where the visuals are doing as much as I love good dialogue, and I do, I kind of love when you have the visuals really telling the story. And I would agree with you in many ways that the visuals do tell such a good story here.
Yeah. Well, and for example, in that scene when Sadaf, the friend, is injured because she's shot in the face.
That is so disturbing.
When she's first, there and they're tending to her, I could not tell what the injury was other than, to me, I just thought she got hit in the face with blunt force, something or other.
Right.
But then when Najma drops the buckshot in the sink later, it's just like, ew, she got shot in the face, And so that's just one of the things that I mean. It's like, well, she's injured. Oh, it's even, not that getting hit in the face with a blunt object is fun, but for some reason it makes it even worse that she was hit with buckshot. It just seems so much more cruel in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, also she's in Najma's arms, and Najma's pulling out with little tweezers all of the pieces, and it's it's such a long scene. It is uncomfortably long, and which just adds to the brutality of it.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, and I said this before, but I love how this fuses real world protests and politics in with what's happening in this family drama. So and thriller. Oh, this is a good one. All right, do you have any other thoughts?
No, I have no further thoughts. It's just I would highly recommend it.
All right. Well, speaking of that, let's do a recap, and we'll start with Seed of the Sacred Fig since you already said that. This is playing in theaters now, and I would also highly recommend this. I think it's great.
Absolutely.
And then I Saw the TV Glow I believe you can rent this on demand, but it's also streaming on Max. And I clearly recommend this because it was my favorite movie of the year. But would you recommend it, Dave?
Well, I don't not recommend it. It's just
that's fair.
You have to be prepared to sit and watch it. It's not you can't
half watch it. No, definitely not. Yeah. Which we'll have to talk about that. The whole Netflix category of movies that you can just listen to, you don't have to pay attention to. Anyway.
Right.
Oh God. Anyway. All right. Well, sorry. I'm thinking about Netflix, which is just kind of, I don't want to say it's making my blood boil because that's not true, but it is just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Anywho, thank you so much for listening. We want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs. Heather, thanks so much.
Thank you, Heather.
Also want to give, while we're giving thanks, we want to give a huge thank you to our amazing editor, Otto Clammer. Otto, thank you so much.
Thank you, Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also go to our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on social media. We're all over the place. Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, and Threads. So come follow us. Say hello. And if you want to chat with us about either of these movies or any movies, you can email us at spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PIECE.
You can leave us a voicemail message. You can text us. Let us know, did you love these movies? Did you not? Did you feel conflicted too? We want to hear. We want to hear what you have to say. And what were your favorite movies of the year? I know we talked about that last week, but we're in the new year. We're still talking about favorites or what movies you're anticipating. We just like hearing from you.
Yeah.
And if you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us. That helps us out a lot. Get the word out. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. It will take you to your preferred platform of choice. You can also go just rate us directly on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And if you really, really like the show and you're not already a patron, consider joining. For $5 a month, you get access to weekly bonus episodes like this week's, where we talk about the 1995 indie comedy Party Girl starring Parker Posey. And we had a lot of fun with that movie and talking about it. And you also get access to our back catalog, and you also get to vote in monthly polls, which is cool. And speaking of, if you really like the show and you want to show your love for indie movie podcasts, you can buy our merch. We have merch at our TeePublic store, which you can find at our website. And we have all kinds of things like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies. Well, that's a hoodie. That's a sweatshirt. Anyway, mugs, tote bags, pillows, notebooks, you name it. We probably have magnets. We probably have some merch for you. So you can show off how much you love us.
And we love you too, just though we
do. We love you all so much. And yeah, that's it. So my name is, I keep feeling like I had more to say. I probably could go on and on about the merch because it's so cute and I love it so much.
Cute.
It's so cute. It's so good. But anyway, my name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm also a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Opinion S World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinion S.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm on not Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, and Threads as Dave Sees Movies.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.